Hello, hello, everybody. We are back once again with uh, another look at a book that I had read, um, and I just been reading a lot, and I decided to continue my readings, specifically in the realm of comics, and I just finished this one today. It took me a little longer. A little bit thicker of a read, I must say, in terms of like details and stuff like that. Um, so, so now we're here to talk about it. That comic being Kingdom Come. This is as I basically have been reading, Superman related stuff, I decided to take a look at Kingdom Come, as I've been hearing about it a lot. And I actually bought the physical cover for this, physical copy of this. I do have other physical copies, but those are based off of what I read on a digital platform. There is digital, but you have to buy it through the digital, and I prefer to have a hard copy. That way, if I ever want to read it again, I have it in my hands. So I actually just read through this here in the book, uh, not through a digital platform. So which oddly enough had a different experience for me. I don't know why. It's my eyes are not that great. I guess in some ways I've been learning through reading, especially in this capacity. Bless me. That somehow, um, somehow, reading on on the Kindle works better for my eyes than it does here. But I'll still able to read this and focus up. It's just I don't know, weird stuff I've noticed. Um, but But yeah, this is Kingdom Come. This is Mark Wade and Alex Ross, who I believe provides the artwork for this story. Very notable artist in DC. Done plenty of DC comics here and there, but this is my first of his. Um, so as the story goes, this is set in the far future, and the old guard, basically the guards that we are familiar with, the Justice League characters, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, all those characters, they are either formally retired or they have removed themselves from that of humanity, and a new generation of heroes is now running things, and they are a lot more reckless. They are a lot more willing to commit violence, and they just don't possess as much of a care for humanity. Also, so humanity is kind of left to defend itself, and we follow a guy named Norman McKay, and we see through his point of view, kind of that of a cynical point of view. He's longing for the old days, the days of the Superman and the Batmans and the Wonder Womans, the days of when he felt that the heroes actually were more respectful and more, uh, were more caring for its citizens, and not just that of like godlike figures. And uh, one of his friends dies, and his friend dying has ramifications because his friend has been experiencing visions of an impending threat, an Armageddon, and Norman believes that he was going crazy or maybe just saying things. But Norman starts to have those visions also. And one day, because he is a pastor at a church, a figure arrives to his church known as the Spectre. The Spectre is like a spirit wandering. He's a cosmic being, but he travels through past, present, and future through the spirit realm in an observational manner. And uh, he was intended to meet Norman's friend, but instead, since Norman is now possessing those visions, the Spectre and Norman travel and observe what will become the Armageddon. And that's where we get to introduce the characters of Superman, a much older Superman, a Wonder Woman who's probably is detached from her society, a Batman who is literally broken. So But more or less, we are focusing on Superman and focusing on his turmoils and his uh, his desires to reestablish order in the wake of the actions of this new generation of heroes. And then that's where the story, goes from there. And it's a very dense story, I will say. First of all, with all the other stories that I have read, so far, comic wise, this is definitely the most dense that I have, read in terms of content because there's a lot of characters, that are in the story. Namely, five characters that you are following. You have the Trinity, which is Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and then you have Norman McKay and you have the Spectre. Those are like the five characters that you really are trying to focus on. The rest of the characters, like there's Lex Luthor, and then there's other characters. Shazam has a part in this. Um, there's other players here and there, but more or less they are kind of adding layerings to the story, not necessarily uh, being uh, being integral to the plot itself. Um, basically adding little details, adding little things here and there to manifest into what will become the the last few pages of the book. But yeah, I gotta say, I mean, of all the stuff that I've read so far, I've read some Superman stuff before I got into this. I read Red Sun, I read All Star Superman. I also read the Supergirl comic that will be the inspiration for the Supergirl film coming out. So I've gotten a little bit of a look into Superman, um, and getting into Kingdom Come. Um, you know, to call it a Superman story, I feel would be a little bit of a disservice. It's more, I would say, of a, um, I mean, arguably it's like a Trinity story. I wouldn't say it's the Justice League story because some of the Justice League characters aren't as integral to the plot. I mean, there is a Flash and there is a Green Lantern. Aquaman makes an appearance, but they, I don't think we ever saw Cyborg at all in the book. I don't think we ever saw Cyborg. Um, yeah, no, I don't think we ever saw him. Um, but it's more or less about these three heroes, about Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. So I'd say it's more about the Trinity. It's a book really about the Trinity. Superman is the focus, but it's really also their story as well. When you consider what the story is also fundamentally about, in terms of a thematic idea, which I have to say I also found really intriguing and was what kind of kept me interested, especially with how it was laying out its context, of how it was laying out the story itself, because it's very carefully plotted to where you it leaves you, especially where at points where I stop reading the book and return back to it. It always feels as if that there is some mystique. It's not like when we are trying to figure out what the Armageddon is going to be. It is it is that of a mystery. It's not something that's blatantly obvious. It is something that kind of is set up and is being molded until you start to realize that, oh, okay, that is what the threat is, and that is, what is going to set the chain of events off, and and it's interesting, especially in the context of what the story is about, because the story of Kingdom Come is essentially a story about perspective and a story about the power of that perspective and the and what happens with that perspective, and the nuances within that, the fact that the choices that you make are always going to come with consequences, and that's what ultimately the story itself is about. It's about judgments, and it's about what motivates those judgments, or what is created because of those judgments, the kind of conflicts that are breeded and stuff like that. Like, in some ways it's a very timely story, given just the world that we live in right now. in some respects. It's a very, very fascinating idea to explore, and I think it's done very, um, I think it's done very, very, very interestingly. Like I really, I get the impression of that theme fed through all these characters. Like I get that Batman has a specific motivation, Wonder Woman has a specific motivation, Superman has a specific motivation. All the characters in the book has their own motivations, and the only people who really are just kind of sitting in just taking it all in is that of Norman and the Spectre. Um, it's only until a certain point in the book is Norman forced to make a judgment, and is Norman forced to make an opinion, and ultimately how he decides to walk that line is also the point of the story, in that compassion is what's going to lead to peace. It's not about somebody trying to dominate over another. It's about finding that resolve through compassion. And I really, really like that. I really, really like that as how that's the way that the story just kind of ends, the way that the story just finds its conclusion. It's not through people, punching each other in the face and then it's resolved through the dominant chimp. It's because it's it's compassion that is discovered, and recognizing the flaws and maybe in your own logic and being human. I love that about this character's portrayal of Superman is that he's he doesn't even want to be called Clark. He wants to be only referred to as Cal. Because he has become so detached from humanity. Because he's also carrying loss on his shoulders. Lois Lane is not in the picture anymore. His parents are gone. He's by himself mostly, and and he's trying to reestablish order, but he is only looking at it through a very specific lens. And it's only until the very end, when he almost does the unthinkable, does he come to realize that he there's that other side of him there. Like, so it's Norman said it's kind of a cheesy line, but it also kind of puts it in perspective. At one point Norman says to Superman in the book, "You're being more super than you are being man." And in that, it is recognizing that you need to be more compassionate and you need to be more uh, considerate, and not just be about only what you're thinking. Extending an olive branch, providing a bridge. And I really like that. I really like that, and I really like, again, this portrayal of Superman, someone who is trying to be that hopeful figure, but deep down they have this darkness that's been festered, and this cynicism that is there. You know, so I really like that. Um, I like I like their idea of Batman. Basically, he pretty much is always pretty much is Batman by definition. Just how you come to define Batman. This Batman is pretty much a classic Batman. So it's not like they're doing anything crazy with him. I mean, he's broken and beaten up and stuff like that. But fundamentally, he is still the same person. Um, the issues that I start to find with the book is certain things um, within characteristics of people. Um, I don't like how they resolve Wonder Woman's arc. Because I wasn't also a fan of Wonder Woman in the story. Because when we first meet her, she seems fine. She's trying to look after Superman. Then you start to realize that there's more of a maybe a romance that's being spawned. There's an attraction between the two of them. To then her ultimately being the aggressor, to her ultimately being the person that wants to to go to war and wants to fight, wants to incite violence. And it kind of echoes, like, if you ever are familiar with the Injustice storyline, it kind of reminds me of that kind of Wonder Woman, someone who is just wanting to do it because she has that warrior instinct and she wants to just to fight, And but we learn in the book that she's doing it because she's wanting to validate the purpose that she had set out to do. In her mind, this is changing man's world, but it's not truly benefiting anybody. It's just for her own self interest. So when she at the end gets to become queen again, because the whole point of her also riding solo and being with Superman is that she has been, I don't know if they've banished her from her homeland, but basically she's been stripped away of her royalties and her status. She's no longer the queen, of Themyscira. Excuse me, because the people thought that she had failed in her mission. Because the place, the future is a lot more cynical, and is, the heroes out there now are causing more danger than anything. So in their eyes, Diana didn't really change much of anything. Um, So I get why she might feel a certain way, why she might feel a bit bitter, or maybe feeling a little bit maybe hostile. I don't know, but it just doesn't really like for her to be ultimately one of the pillars that starts the war to begin with. Kind of leading the charge in that way. Like I don't really find that characterization to be appealing. And to add on to that, I wasn't really buying into the whole romance between Superman and Wonder Woman. I didn't really buy it because I felt like that was kind of just a side plot. It wasn't necessarily something that was fully developed or was wanting to be looked at um, more deeply. It was just like very, 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 very casual, almost to the point where it's subtle, you know. So to which all I asked, like, why is it there to begin with? Um, I get it how it informs Superman's character because of how distant he's become from people and also from anything in that vein, like pursuing a relationship or anything like that. Wonder Woman is kind of the thing that gets him out of that funk. I get it, but in how it relates to Wonder Woman and how it feeds to her character, it just feels unnecessary, and it just doesn't feel like it serves a larger purpose in the story. It's not something they focus on, but it's just to say that stuff like that I didn't really care for, and I think that they could have just fundamentally have done more with Wonder Woman as a character. Um, so, I feel like I got to read more of her. Like, I got to read like a comic of her specifically because I read Red Sun, which also had Wonder Woman in it, and I felt like in that story she was more of like a victim. She wasn't someone who felt that like completely of her own accord. She felt like she was more of a victim, towards a toxic relationship she had with Superman. Whereas this, she also is kind of in some ways, as it was as it branches, is like kind of a toxic type of dynamic to some extent. To some extent, I mean, kind of, sort of, not really. Um, Probably genuine, but again, not fully developed. But she is the aggressor. She is the one who wants to go do the more harsh things, And I don't know, for her to then get what she is so bitter about or feels, uh, the thing that she lost. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that arc of her character. I would have liked it more if she was just more independent after that whole situation. If she just kind of went about her own way and not, just get what she wanted, or try or just fall back into being the queen. Um, but other than that, I mean, it is it is a very, very interesting read, and there is a lot of characters. I mean, there's a lot of characters in here. Um, so many that sometimes like it's like, especially because the art is just gorgeous. By the way, I mean, I'll just show you a little bit of it. I mean, the art in this is just wonderful. Like some of the art in this, I mean, if you can take a look at this, I mean, it is just some really, really just nice, just artwork going on here. Um, at some points it like looked legitimately like like photo real. I'm not joking. Like some points I was just like surprised by how really, really well crafted some of this stuff looks. I mean, look at this here. I mean, this looks like just this looks really, really cool. So it's a lot. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of there's a lot of details, that going on within that story, but it's built very well to where when you do end up to the finale, to where Armageddon begins, it all feels well integrated, and it all feels like that everything is functioning. Some stuff, like I said, like things with Wonder Woman, it's like I could have done without, or just things needed to be further developed for me to kind of feel more for her character. Um, but I genuinely really liked the story. I was really satisfied by the end. Like that's my feeling upon reading it. When I read it, finished it today, I was really satisfied with where it ended, because I really liked that the story brings it all home. About this message about perspective, and it's about not just the nuances within that and the gray. Within having such a perspective, it's about having the compassion that bridges people together, and showing respect, and feeling as though people are also individuals, treating them as such and not just, at odds with each other. So so yeah, it's got a lot. It's got a lot of characters in it. It's got a lot of really gorgeous artwork. It's got a great story. I really, really enjoyed this book. I really did, and probably so far my favorite. Probably, yeah, probably my favorite of the reads that I've had so far in terms of comics. Um, yeah, but like I said, I wouldn't define this as a Superman story. I don't think this is a Superman story. I mean, Superman obviously is the center figure to the story, but this is actually more of a Trinity story. This is a Batman, Wonder Woman, and a Superman story, and how all those characters intertwine. Um, but yeah, really gorgeous artwork, really good story, and um, just a very fascinating thematic study, and really well written too. There's some really good, good lines in here, some really good stuff, especially from when it comes to the whole Spectre and Norman, uh, you know, them and their whole purpose in the story. So yeah, I would really recommend this if you're like, kind of getting into comics like I am. You know, I don't know if maybe if I'd recommend this as like starting point, and if you're getting into Superman, probably get into like All Star Superman or something like that. That's probably like a better starting point, because that's much more in line to what Superman is in terms of a character. Kingdom Come is a future story. It's a very, very like distant story in the future, and the Superman is, not the Superman that you all know and love. He's a very different kind of character. So holds very similar values, but how he holds them is what makes him different. So, but yeah, I really liked this. I really, really liked the story a lot, and I really liked how it was told, and just general and how, but just my whole just experience with reading it to the end. I was just really engaged, and by the end, I was just very satisfied with Superman and Wonder Woman, having a baby, and then Batman becomes the Godfather, and they're all working together. No one's having like a huge prejudice against each other. It's just very sweet, and it leaves for a lot of hope, and it leaves for a lot of 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 wonder for the future, which I really love as the ending of the story is, them Bruce, Clark, and Diana. Superman being comfortable being called Clark, by the way, which really I really like uh, that subtle, showing of Superman's growth. Him being able to call himself Clark again, wearing the glasses, from Diana giving him glasses, like all that, all little things that, yeah, play up on nostalgia, or play up on, on references to the source material, but the way that it all is handled, it has it has an importance to it, and by general story, what is being told here, it is it it's it has weight to it, and it has um, and it has gravity to it to some extent. So yeah, I really enjoyed Kingdom Come. I thought it was a very good story, and I think that between the books that I've read so far, this would probably be my favorite. I don't know if I'll be reading more Superman stuff. I've been wanting to get into Batman, so we might do Batman next. I don't know, because Batman is hard. There's a lot of like different comics that you have to read, so I've been reading up on which ones I should be reading, um, in order to like kind of follow the storylines or to understand things here and there. But this is a good story. If you're just generally looking for a read within DC, this is a good story. But in terms of like Superman stuff, I'd probably go with like All Star Superman as like your entry point or something like that. At least for me, anyway. That's where I kind of started off with Superman proper. Um, but yeah, if you guys have read Kingdom Come, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts revolving around it. I would like to see this as an adaptation. I would like to see this whole book adapted at some point. Um, It would have to be obviously like an Elseworld stuff because this wouldn't make sense within the James Gunn universe and stuff like that. This would be a story you would tell if your franchise is like maybe like freaking like 10, 15 years in. This would be like a story you tell that's like at the end, of everything, like a Logan type situation where it's like far, far in the future, So maybe one day we'll see. But that's going to be it for my thoughts on Kingdom Come. You guys, know your thoughts on Kingdom Come if you guys have read it. Any other recommendations also from DC? I would love any recommendations, either being Superman related, Batman related. I've been wanting to get into just generally with DC. I've just been getting into it. So let me know. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this review, guys. This little book thing. Again, I'll just kind of keep doing it just for my own pleasure. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.